Today, I'd like to talk to you about the stigma of homelessness. There's a number of issues that contribute to the stigma of homelessness, and there's basically they fall into one of two categories. One, either it's just society has a prejudice against poor people, against people who have made mistakes, and sometimes they're just simply cannot accept that people are homeless for valid reasons. So they sort of put us into a category that isn't sympathetic. They think of us as someone who has chosen to fail, who doesn't really have any personal hygiene, and just simply doesn't care about life, but expects everyone to take care of them. Now, on the other hand, there's what I call the earned stigma, and that's what I'd like to talk about today, one of those issues. There are others that we'll talk about in another session, but today I'd like to talk about the about panhandling. Nobody likes to be approached by a stranger and be asked for money. And if that stranger happens to have an appearance that indicates that they're living on the street, then there's even a higher level of discomfort, even if there's a certain sympathy for how this person must be living and a certain desire to help them out. Of course, we know the authorities frown on that. They want the big organizations to receive the giving. But my attitude about panhandling is simply put, don't do it. For one thing, you're not making that much money for all the work you're putting into it. You might hear guys tell stories about making a bunch of money, but whenever I hear somebody talk about, they're making a lot of money at this or at that, or they've actually already got a house, or they've got a job and they're making a bunch of money, you know, why are you living on the street? Nobody would live on the street if they had the means to live on their own or live in a safe environment. So I'm a little bit skeptical about that. But the other reason is that when you're out there begging, which is what you're doing, you're experiencing the taunts of strangers, the insults, sometimes verbal, sometimes nonverbal. You're actually sometimes at risk for your personal safety, or you're just being shunned. So for every dollar you may make panhandling, you're you're creating situations where you're being torn down time and time again, so that whatever you gain in the short run, you're losing in the long run. Nobody can stand there and degrade themselves in that way and not come away degraded. So I discourage panhandling simply because it doesn't make sense. It's not practical. Now, in my experience, please contact me if you're in a different area and it's completely different where you are. But here in Las Vegas, I would say the overall majority of guys that are panhandling are doing it for one or two reasons, or both: cigarettes and alcohol. So you will often see, guys trying to get enough money for a couple of loosies. Another way that the homeless make money around here is to make cigarettes. Then you can sell them for a dime or so, um, and make a little bit of money that way. Uh, but if you're out there panhandling just to continue an addiction, then my attitude is, and it's much easier said than done, to put that time and that effort into fighting that addiction. If you have a problem with smoking, if you have an addiction to cigarettes, to nicotine, even though it gives you a certain amount of pleasure, think about what you could accomplish every day by just simply not smoking that day. If you can find a smoking cessation program But one day at a time, you could actually build yourself up by resisting that impulse. You don't have to panhandle. You don't have to dig around in the trash looking for cigarette butts or walk around all day looking at the sidewalk to see where people have discarded their cigarettes in the hopes that there's just a nub there that you can get a little bit of a head off of. Now, alcohol is more difficult because people don't tend to leave bottles laying around that they haven't finished. So you're basically going to have to you're going to have to buy that. So, you're going to raise $1 or two so you can get a couple of cans of, Steel Reserve or something that's really, really cheap. But again, you're not satisfying that desire. You're just barely giving yourself something that you think you need. If you can figure out a way, whether it's going to meetings or talking to other people or just focusing on something else, just try to do it for one day. Try not smoking, try not drinking, and see if you can just make it, because it's not going to be easy. But I'll tell you, it's one of the best exercises in building yourself back up. If you can have the discipline, despite the fact that you're homeless, to improve yourself. Now, again, I really discourage panhandling because it's not safe and because it makes our community look bad. And it makes people uncomfortable around us. It doesn't matter if you think you're trying to create a scenario where you're earning it by holding a door, pumping somebody's gas. I know in Philadelphia that was a big thing. I haven't seen that here, but boy, in Philly, every time you got gas, there was somebody there ready to pump it for you. The problem is that it's less charity on the part of the people giving the money than it is a sense of fear that if you don't give, then something bad might happen. And so you end up looking like someone who's not just trying to get something, but maybe it could be someone who's dangerous. They don't know. So don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to us. And if there's no special program for the homeless where you're at for smoking cessation, start one. Talk to social workers. Get some help to get something going. Because I can tell you that if the cops would give a lot less tickets out and more, you can go to class if you've got an anger management problem, if you've got a drinking and driving problem. There are classes they will send you to mitigate the ticket, the penalty. Well, if you're homeless and you get a ticket to go to a smoking cessation program and you're required to go to it in exchange for whatever fee you would have to pay for jaywalking or trespassing, I think it would benefit both sides of the equation. So, but that's not the reality right now. But think about how you can get by without panhandling, and think about what you can do with your time and why you're panhandling. What are you spending that money on, and can you live without it? So again, it's easy, it's simple to do the right thing, but the process is excruciating. But I'm going to encourage you, because I believe if you're watching this, you're someone who wants to be that success story out there. You're someone who wants to be a comeback story and maybe eventually help do like what I'm doing and help the people that you left behind. But I can tell you that's not something you're going to want to do right away. For a long time, you're going to want to stay away from that life because it's just too painful. But one day I decided it wasn't so painful anymore. I felt like I made it and I wanted to help. So I hope this helps you. Be in touch, educate me about your area, or if you have any questions or need help finding resources. So that'll be all for this session, and we'll see you again soon.